it's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's gonna stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever gonna stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
See, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
Yeah, that sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. If you would just...
Don't.
Try to see things my way. Do I have to keep on talking till I can't go on?
Have you ever had a moment where you said this and they heard that? Have you ever had a moment where you realize, man, communication is just difficult? If you're new to LifeBridge, we're doing a series called I Said This, You Heard That. We actually did this series in April of 2021, so almost 4 years ago. And this series really did transform our church. In fact, more than anything, it transformed me and an understanding of who I was and who God created me to be. Even as a pastor of this church, I am still learning. I'm still studying and seeking to understand who God wants me to be. And so we're going to do it again. And this series is a very lighthearted series. In fact, if you're new to LifeBridge, you are here at a perfect time. We're going to be extremely practical in this series. It's going to be a lot of hands-on skill sets, practice, things you could do all around the idea of communication. Because here's the truth this morning. Regardless of following Jesus or not following Jesus, we can all acknowledge that communication is extremely complicated. There are times in your life where you're like, I don't know what to say or how to say it. And if you're like me, you end up saying something and it's always the wrong thing. Man, I just kind of every once in a while catch myself, and I hear my mom in the back of my brain saying, "Chris, if you ain't got nothing good to say or nice to say, don't say it at all." And I'm like, why didn't I listen to her? It came out way too fast. I'm like, I should have never said that. And just so you know, as we process through this talk, as we process through this conversation, this series, there'll be a moment where you feel like you should nudge the person beside you or look at them those eyes that says, "Do you hear him?" Don't do that. Refrain, okay? Because that doesn't help your communication at all right? Sometimes actions do speak louder than words. This series is all about me and my mistakes. You can point to me and be like, don't be like him. That's the goal of this. But we will all talk about how communication is hard and how we sometimes say the wrong thing. And sometimes we say the right thing the wrong way. I can just think back to having children when they were all little, and I had this superpower. I could say things and immediately break my children into emotion. I could just destroy them, I'm saying the wrong thing, don't touch that outlet, or get away from the stove, or watch out for the stairs, or don't run in front of that car. I'm saying the right thing, just the wrong way. And my tone and my demeanor and my projection of Hulk was so intense that they would have rather run in front of the car than to hear me scream at them, right? It's the right thing, just the wrong way. Have you ever said the right thing at the wrong time? It's amazing. The truth can be damaging. You can say the right thing at the wrong time, and they do not agree with you that it's the right thing. Communication is really hard. You can say one thing, and the person listening to you hear something entirely different, and you're like, how did you do that? I said this. You heard that. What happened? Communication is hard. And many of us have found ourselves in a situation or a place where we're like, I wish I would have said nothing at all. But then we realize it's even more destroying sometimes when we don't speak up or say anything. Communication is hard. This series that we're doing for a second time is all about one simple truth. Words are important and powerful. You're going to hear me say that over and over and over again. It's going to be kind of like the nail in your head. I do not want you to forget. Words are important and powerful. Words are important and powerful. They are to be used wisely. And here's why. On an average, this is an average, humans, me, you, we speak 16,000 words a day. 16,000 words come out of our mouth a day. Please don't take offense to this, but some of you are overachievers. And you are beyond average, and that is a compliment from the guy who talks a lot, but listen to this. The average book is 250 pages. Our words would fill 100 plus books a year. There has not been a year in my life where I've read 100 plus books, okay? I do read, not that many. But that's how many words come out of our mouth every single day, every single year. And that's why paying attention to our words is such a critical, important task. It is something that we should think about, that we should listen to wisdom, think before you speak. We should pay attention to our words. But that's not something that I'm making up. It's not Chris's, new topic for the year. This is something that's been talked about for a long time. The book of wisdom, we call it Proverbs, was written by a guy named David and a guy named Solomon, and they collectively put down like words that, regardless if you believe in Christ or not, people agree upon them being powerful, powerful words of wisdom. In Proverbs 11:9, it says this: with their wounds, the godless destroy their friends. With their words, not wounds. This is the first week back to 2 services, so the words are going to be kind of crazy. With their words, the godless destroy their friends. Proverbs 15:4, gentle words are a tree of life. They breathe life into people. But it says a deceitful tongue crushes the spirit. Proverbs 16:24, it says kind words are like honey, sweet to the soul and healthy to the body. Proverbs 18:21, it says the tongue can bring death or life. You don't have to believe in Jesus today to agree with these. There's many times where you've experienced words doing that. There's been times where words encouraged you, made you feel like you were on cloud nine, like someone said something that affirmed you, or you felt seen or known, or they praised you for what you did, and you felt so good. But then there's been times where you've heard words that, man, they just breathe destruction in you. There's been times where you've laid in bed and you looked to your phone and checked that email and saw that email that, man, it wreaked havoc in you and you didn't sleep that night. You have felt the power of words. We need to know their power. We need to know their importance. And so the next 3 weeks, we're going to explore an idea that has the potential to revolutionize the way that you communicate, that has the potential to, in turn, impact all of your relationships, not just spouse or marriage or family, but even your friendships, your coworkers. Like this tool, this formula has the ability to revolutionize how you see the world, how you speak to the world, and even how the world hears you. We're going to dissect a single verse. Now listen here, I don't do this often. But for the next few weeks, we're going to stay in one passage of scripture. The hope is that you have it memorized when we finish, and that you can't walk around any place in Savannah, in Georgia, in our country, in the world without remembering this verse. We're going to dissect it, go through it, talk about it in order that you would know it. But understand that it has a deep impact on how you communicate. But I also want you to know this. There is a motive behind the series. And when you walked in this morning, you possibly saw, but if you're like me, once you see something a couple of times, it eventually just disappears, but there's 5 images on the wall behind you. They're like in picture frames. And those 5 images are the values of LifeBridge. And our values are kind of our guiding direction. Like, this is what we believe, this is who we are, and this is where we're going. And one of those values, which is very important to me, is that we believe in practice, not perfection. Okay, I just want to say it again. We believe in practice, not perfection. If you're here this morning and you're like new to faith, maybe you don't believe in Jesus yet, or maybe you've been doing this whole Christian thing for a long time, you never reach a season where you're not practicing what you believe. Like, it's a requirement. Perfection, I don't believe is necessarily attainable, because I keep trying, and even when I don't succeed, I just feel even worse for myself. Practice is our goal. Like, try to do this thing called following Jesus. And so that's kind of our direction for this series, is that it's all about practice. But in Ephesians 5:1, he says it better than I could. Paul, writing to a church called Ephesus, he says these words: imitate God, therefore, in everything you do, because you are his children. He tells this church to imitate God. Imitate simply means to copy or to replicate. We say practice because it's our duty to practice being like Jesus. It's our duty to practice loving like him, serving like him, surrendering like him. In fact, Paul says it this way in verse 2 of Ephesians 5:2. He says, live a life filled with love, following the example of Christ. Like, our motive for this series is that we as Christ followers are to imitate God. Now, if you're here this morning, and I'm just going to keep saying this because I want to make sure I never assume that you're here and you believe in Jesus. If you aren't a Christ follower, like, you've picked the perfect series to hang out with us. This whole series is about what Christ followers should look like, how we should act, what our life should be like. And so if you're here today and you're like, I struggle with Jesus because I've met some Christians and I don't want no part of who they follow, like, you're following the wrong person. Like, the goal is to look to Jesus. Us as humans, we're not like the most perfect creatures. We make mistakes. We all do. So as you join us, as you follow along, this is what we're supposed to look like. This is who we're following. This is what Jesus wants for us. So the motive is that we'd imitate God in everything we do, because we're his children, that we would live a life filled with love, following the example of Christ. Now, here's the cool part. Every once in a while, I need to use my seminary because I paid a lot of money for it. In this first verse, it says the word therefore. And my whole life in church, whenever a pastor said the word therefore, he taught me, and seminary taught me, you're supposed to ask the question, what's it? What's it? Perfect. Okay, you got to ask the question. Like, whenever you see a therefore, because I don't use therefore in my world. I don't say that. It's not often coming out like therefore. Listen, the Bible uses the word therefore. Whenever you see it, always look at the 20 verses ahead of it. Just go back and see what the author was speaking of. Therefore is always, listen, it's coming from something. Like, they taught something, and now therefore something, okay? And so in this situation, Paul, he teaches 3 things, like 6 verses ahead of this, that you can't lose. And we're going to pick one of those this next 3 weeks and hang out. But he says, stop telling lies. That's a good one. Like, believe in Jesus or don't. Stop telling lies. It's a great one. He says, quit stealing. If you're doing that, stop it. Okay, like, don't steal. That's what he says. And then he says these words, and this is where we're going to hang out. He makes it so easy. He says, don't use foul or abusive language. So we're talking about communication, and Paul talking to this church in Ephesus a long time ago, like 1,800 years ago. Paul's 1,900 years ago. He's talking to this church, and he says, don't use foul or abusive language. And so I just want you, in your mind for a second, I want you to think, like, what comes to mind when you hear the words foul and abusive? If you're like me, you think insults, you think offensive words, you think inappropriate words. Let's just be honest, you might think of cuss words. When I think of this, I think about me being raised. My parents had words that were off limits. I was not allowed to use the S word. Do not say stupid in this household. You thought I was going to say something else, didn't you? How dare you? No, it was like a thing, like growing up, like I just wasn't allowed to say these words. And I'd go to school and people said those words, and I, being this little good Christian kid in kindergarten, first grade, like, they said that word. and they didn't get in trouble, but I get in trouble for saying that word. I always assumed like offensive words or words that my parents said you couldn't say were bad words. I grew up and you were not allowed to say the F word. By no means were you to ever say fart, okay? Like ever. And my mom thought that word was disgusting, okay? Like, Mom, I love you. I'm telling on you. She did not like that word. Now, my whole family used it, but in our household, that word was off limits. And so growing up, when I think of foul or abusive or a language I couldn't use, it was always the words my parents said I couldn't say. The ones that I really wanted to, but I couldn't, like that was foul and abusive. But Paul is not talking to kids here. He's talking to adults. And the English language kind of sometimes destroys the true meaning of what word Paul was using. If you look into what he was saying in the Greek, Paul used this word sapros, S-A-P-R-A-S. And this word has a dual meaning. So what we say foul or abusive, when he says sapros, he spoke of a word that was deeper than foul or abusive. It was bad, rotten, corrupt. Like the meaning of what he said, don't say, was these words that you would speak and it would go into the heart of someone and it would corrupt them. It would actually sow seeds that were bad. It was destructive. That it would enter into their head, seep into their heart, and destroy them. It would literally eat them from the inside out. Like there was a depth into the word. We say foul or abusive. We're like bad words. And he's like, no. Words that tear people up. There's an author that I read probably 15 years ago, and he gave this analogy of words. He said, so often we're quick to fire off a round of wounding words. He gave words the imagery of a bullet. And he said, we feel so much better after we've shot off those words. But we don't realize is that we've left the person we hit carrying a lifetime wound of how they've affected them. When Paul's writing to these followers, he's speaking of words that are more than just words you shouldn't say, but words that are destructive and harmful. But there's two meanings. Bad, rotten, corrupt are the first meaning. The second one was useless or worthless. Words that we would say that had no bearing of goodwill or truth. Gossip. I heard someone say this. Let me tell you what they said. But you don't know if it's true or not. That's useless. It does no good. Only destruction. Worthless is the words that Paul would say when we share something that's a lie, when we speak to make ourselves feel better, when we tell things that aren't true. Like, don't do this as Christ followers. And if you don't follow Jesus, you're like, that's actually good advice. I shouldn't use words that are harmful, bad, rotten, corrupt, or useless, that have no good intention. They're worthless. Now, the reason I go into depth on understanding these words that Paul uses is because he then gives us words that we should use. And by understanding what we shouldn't speak, what we shouldn't say, words that should not come out of our mouth, we understand the words we should speak. He continues in the same verse, 429. He says, let everything you say be good and helpful. So what Paul's doing is he's giving a comparison. He wants us to understand his primary concern is don't use words that hurt people, that destroy them, that are useless. He says use words that are good, that are helpful. Why? Because you're imitating God. You're an image of Jesus to the world around you. Your life, your actions, and even more importantly, your words have the power of life and death. So pay attention. Be careful what you say. Make sure that it's good and helpful. And listen, we're all like, I agree. If you were in a Baptist church, you're like, preach it. Amen. That's what we do, right? We all agree until we're in our comfort, in our private relationships. Because the truth is this, in the average relationship, there are 6 complaints or criticism to every 1 compliment. In the average relationship, and we talked about average this morning, and some of us are above average, some of us use words, a lot of them. In the average relationship, to every one encouraging word, there are 6 complaints or criticisms. And the relationships outside of the average, okay? And the more acquaintance of relationships. A software company called Zendesk did this massive research. And they found some things about how we receive information and what we do with it. Zendesk found that people are more likely to share bad experiences than they are positive experiences. I said this, 54% shared bad experiences with 5 or more people. And I can agree with that. When I have a bad experience, I'm like, I'm going to tell everybody, you better not go to that restaurant. They did not have good food. Their service was terrible. Like something in me is like, I feel offended when there's a negative experience. Don't take your car to that place. They'll take your money. Like you ever felt that before? When you have a negative experience, you just feel like you're going to tell somebody. I mean, go on Amazon and look at reviews. You can tell people who have been offended. They write 75 paragraphs where the people who like it, it's like, excellent, good, worth the money. The people who didn't like it, let me tell you my life story. Like we just share things differently when it's been a negative experience. And their article proves that. But they go on to say this. They said that we have heightened emotional responses to negativity. It says our brain reacts differently. Negative emotions are processed longer, more thoroughly, making that experience last longer. I said it earlier, but have you ever experienced that where you like opened an email right before bed and then you didn't sleep for the next few nights because I can't believe I got that email. That negative experience, that negative emotion sits. We ponder on it. We think about it. We did a series year before last, called Shower Conversations. We start having conversations with that person even though they're not present. We start telling them what we would think of and what we'd say if we had the opportunity. Because that negative emotion, it sits different. It lasts longer. It's processed more thoroughly. The truth of this whole idea is that when negative things are spoken, man, it just hits differently. It hurts. It doesn't go away. Words are powerful. They're important. But we must understand this. Paul's not finished. He says, let everything you say be good and helpful so that your words will be an encouragement to those who hear them. If I'm honest with you this morning, like really apart from this stage, okay, apart from this platform, the primary reason for communication is not to be good and helpful. The primary reason for communication is to be heard. I got something to say. I want you to hear my opinion. I want you to know my thoughts, and I want you to agree with what I say. Like, that's just my nature. Like, when I speak, it's like, I got something to say. I mean, you think about the video y'all watched. It's not about the nail, and he's like, it's about the nail. Listen to me. She's like, you're not listening to me. He's like, listen to me. If we just get this out, she's like, stop trying to fix me. And have you ever been in that situation? And that's not just like guy, girl. That can be switched. Those roles can be switched between, male and female. Have you ever been in that situation where it's like, if you would just listen to me, I'd fix your problem. If you just do what I say, like as a parent, I feel like I live that every day. Some of you laughed. Some of you are just crying silently. We want to be heard. Our priority is not always to be helpful. It's really like, do you hear me? When we speak, it's not always to encourage others. Our primary concern when we speak is usually our own needs. Like I'm going to be honest, and we can laugh a little bit about this, but like I just want you to like soak this in a minute. Like when we speak, our human nature is selfish. Like it's just like what we're born with. And it takes practice to break it. But when we speak, our primary concern is usually our need, what we want. It's our desire. Like I want to accomplish my work, my will. Like, are you listening to me? Do you know what I'm saying? This is how we communicate. This is what comes out of our mouth. And even though we're not trying to be hurtful, there are many times the words that we use destroy. Even when we're not trying to be, I'm not trying to hurt someone. I'm trying to help. I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to make you understand. I'm trying to help you realize our helpful to you words, my helpful to you words, are really not beneficial to the person listening. I believe that we all have had an experience where our helpful to me words, if you were to say that to yourself, the helpful to you words, they're not beneficial to the person listening. You're saying this, but they're hearing that. And so what do we do? How do we get beyond this? Like, how do we get beyond? I just want to give you some examples. Have you ever said, I didn't mean it the way they took it? You know, like, I wasn't trying to hurt their feelings. They misunderstood what I was saying. Have you ever been there, done that? That may have been what they heard, but that is not what I said. Like, there's moments where I'm like, I didn't say that. And then Jamie's like, let me tell you exactly how you said it. I'm like, oh, well, if I did say it that way, that sounds pretty bad, you know, like tone. And that's my biggest thing. You know, I said this, but my tone said that, you know, and like I didn't hear my tone, they heard my tone. There's been so many times in my own personal life where what I said and what was heard was completely different. We've got to learn, we have got to learn that our words are powerful. They're important. And sometimes wanting to help instead of hurt with our words isn't enough. Like just simply wanting to help doesn't make you helpful. Just as much as wanting to play in the NFL doesn't allow me to play in the NFL. Just as much as wanting to be really good at golf doesn't make me good at golf, okay? Like I want to be so good at things. Doesn't mean I'm good at it. It's gonna take some practice. And so I want to introduce to you a tool today that I believe you can use, that you can put it into work today. A tool that I believe will slow you down enough to think before you speak, that'll help you perceive and process how people are hearing you and what you're saying. And the tool comes in the form of the word temperament. Now, a temperament is not a word that I use often. I do know the word temper because I had one growing up. You know, like I was explosive, a short fuse. You made me mad, I would destroy everything. Have you ever seen the movies Inside Out? You know, the little fiery creature? Yeah, Chris was burning hot sometimes, okay? Like I see that in my human nature, but temperament is something that you're born with. It's your innate design. It's your wiring. And sometimes we get them confused with personality, but they're not the same. Personalities can change and evolve based upon situation, circumstance, or experience. But your innate wiring, your temperament, is locked in. It's who you are. And we all have different temperaments. They're not the same. In fact, the study and the stuff I'm going to reveal to you came from a guy named Hippocrates, like 400 BC. And we're not going that direction. I'm not taking you down studying these people, and we're going to stick to the Bible, but I want you to know where some of this stuff comes from. And he revealed these 4 words, and these 4 words are attached to temperaments. And someone much smarter than me, has attached these temperaments to 4 colors. Occasionally, you've heard me mention something like this: I'm a red, okay? And you're like, what does that mean? Today, you're going to find out. If you've been here since 2021, you were part of this series. The reason you're a part of this series still is because we got work to do, all right? We still have work to do. We still have practice. If you're new, this might revolutionize your life. It might change how you see things, but I'm going to show you 4 colors. So I'm going to put a screen on the board, on the screens, a screen. Just look at this image of 4 colors. There you go. Yellow, red, green, and blue, all right? So I'm going to break this down. Hold with me. Sanguines, yellows, okay? Sanguine. Everybody say sanguine. Perfect. They speak the language of people and fun. Yellows need approval, acceptance, attention, and affection. If you're a yellow, you're like a puppy. Everybody wants to be around you, and they're just fun to be around, you know? But puppies need attention and affection and love. They want to be held and played with. You're just like a little puppy, you know? And that's a yellow. If you're a red, you're a choleric. Everybody say choleric. Yep, so choleric speaks the language of power and control. You might understand a little bit who I am now. Reds need loyalty, a sense of control, appreciation, and credit for their work. Just so y'all know, this is not my work, okay? I can't take credit for it. I wish I did, but I didn't. Someone much smarter than me did this. But that's who a red is. They speak the language of power and control. Green are phlegmatics. Everybody say phlegmatics. You'll forget that tomorrow, but it's okay. They speak the language of calm and harmony. They need harmony. They need worthiness. They need a lack of stress. They need respect. Greens like peace. Let's see here. Melancholics, blue. Everybody say melancholic. And they speak the language of perfection and order. They love safety, sensitivity, support, space, and silence. Blues are like, give me space, stop talking, let me work. Okay, like that's some examples of these four. You might already identify with one of the four colors. You might already see a little bit of like, I'm like that. As parents, you might be like, oh, I've got a couple of these in my household. You know, like you don't tell your spouse what they are. It does not go well, okay? We're focused on you, no one else, all right? But I want you to understand this a little better, so I'm going to let you see a video that's going to give a little bit more words to understand these colors. Maybe, just maybe, you can self-diagnose. Y'all watch this. All right, on the count of three, say your color. 1, 2, 3. Oh, I heard a lot of yellows in the room. So you might have just self-diagnosed, and that is the hope. And listen, we don't do fun colors and shapes for the sake of us being in geometry. I do this in all seriousness because I think Ephesians 5:1 needs to be the heart of a follower of Jesus. That we would imitate God in everything that we do. And one of the most important ways for us to imitate him is to know how we speak, communicate, and how it's perceived. That we take this verse in its full effect, that what comes from our mouth is beneficial, it's helpful, that we're encouraging to others. And so often, if the average holds true, many of us speak 6 complaints or criticisms to every one encouragement. And as a follower of Jesus, that simply can't be. We can't continue living the average of the world. We must be different. We must look like Jesus. And understanding how we are wired is really important. And so there's 2 things that I want you to do with this first of a 4-part series. The first is I'd love for you to take the assessment. We just did the really quick self-diagnosis. The assessment is not my own. It is owned by I Said This, You Heard That. And so on the screen is going to be a QR code. You can go directly to their website and you can take the assessment yourself. Scan the QR code on the screen with your phones or the QR code in the seat back in front of you and go to the assessment. But this assessment, it costs $15. Please hear me. If that is a stretch for you, just simply send me an email and I'll take care of the cost for you. This assessment is 40 questions. It takes about 15 minutes. It's very simple. What you get in return is way more information than your color. It gives you strengths. It gives you weaknesses. It tells you how things impact you. It reveals to you when people say this, man, it stirs something in you. It explains that. It explains how when you say this, your kids respond that way. Like, it does so much. It gives you so many tools to understand why you say what you say and how others hear what you say. Man, I encourage you, please do that. If you can't, email me. But nonetheless, I will tell you this. Just simply go to Google, type in, I said this, you heard that, click on images, and you will see a lot of charts and a lot of cool pictures of red, yellows. And there's a lot of free resources online. There's an app you can get that has videos. And in the videos, the people who are talking about their colors are wearing the color that they are. So it helps you understand. Just great resources for you to just check into this and dabble in it. But I ask you to take it one step. Take the assessment, dig in a little bit to understand how God has wired you. Step 1. Step 2 for the day, and this is just kind of the simple approach, is practice. Practice doing what Paul taught. Like practice breaking the average. Like practice that your spouse or your kids or your coworkers or your boss, they would hear more helpful, more encouraging, more good words than negative, critical criticisms or complaints from you. Like have the mindset that you're going to break the average. Have the mindset when you get up in the morning, today I'm going to work on James 1:9. I'm going to be quick to listen and slow to speak. I'm going to hear, then process and think, is what I'm about to say helpful or hurtful? Is what I'm about to say good or toxic? Is what I'm about to say encouraging or discouraging? And then think, how can I share this in a helpful way? How can I share this in a hopeful way, an encouraging way? If we begin practicing, we'll get better at this. We'll become more like Jesus. We'll do what he taught us to do. We'll live a life filled with love, following the example of Christ. But it's going to take some work. And it's going to take practice. So today is day 1. Day 1 of you thinking before you speak, listening to my mom talk to me, Chris. If you got nothing to say, good to say, don't say it at all. Why am I not going to say anything good? Like what's going on inside my heart that what I want to speak to you is hurtful. Like when we slow down and process, we learn, we grow, we change. Jesus transforms us. And that's what this is all about. And so I ask you, practice this week. Listen before you speak. And then maybe think before you speak. Let me pray for us. Jesus, thanks for the day. Thanks for just a simple, practical verse of wisdom that you're calling us to imitate you, to copy, replicate you, that we would be an image, that Jesus, we would reflect you to this world, and that how we speak has extreme importance in how the world sees you. So God, help us process, help us slow down, and help us think before we spew off the words that so quickly hurt and harm others. And God, help us explore our own heart, our own wiring, our innate wiring. God, help us look in and see how you've created us, that you've given us strengths, but we also have weaknesses. And help us walk in and use our words and our strengths. God, we trust that you're going to transform our lives. And God, we hope and believe that you're going to use this church to produce a whole bunch of followers who teach the world what it looks like to follow Jesus. God, we love you. We praise you. It's in your name I pray. Amen.